Hi, I'm Eric from AMP. Today we're going to be upgrading this RAM by integrating the Stinger Heighten multimedia infotainment unit. The kit that we're installing takes the 10-inch HD touchscreen display of the Heighten and mounts it perfectly in the dash of the RAM, so it looks like it rolled off the showroom floor with the Heighten installed. On top of all that, this kit is completely plug and play, so we're not cutting any of the RAM wiring or modifying the vehicle. We do have to take some of the vehicle apart to route the cable through the truck, so we rate this installation a 3 out of 4 pry tools on our install difficulty scale. Before we get started, let's take a look at the tools we're going to use on today's install. A Phillips screwdriver, T25 Torx, T45 Torx, pry tool, ratchet, 11/16 socket, 15mm socket, 13mm wrench, dash snake, and flush cuts. The first step of disassembly is to remove the bolts that are holding the factory dash in the truck. There's a few up here under this rubber mat, and there may or may not be one inside this pocket. Grab your panel pry tool, remove the rubber mats, and remove the T25 Torx screws. Our truck did not have a screw in this hole, and it's also not equipped with a lower floor-mounted center console. If your truck has a floor-mounted center console, the disassembly is slightly different, so please see our instruction manual for your disassembly steps. Now that we've removed the 2 bolts from the top, we're ready to remove this entire dash panel. Grab at the top and pull toward the back of the truck to remove it. Now we can disconnect the connectors on the back of the panel. We're going to set this panel aside. We're going to mount the Heighten in here later. Now we're ready to remove the 4 7mm bolts securing the factory radio into the dash. Now with the 4 bolts removed, we can pull the factory radio out and disconnect the harnesses. Now we can take this tiny radio and throw it in the trash so we never have to look at that small display again. Now we're going to remove the 2 Phillips screws securing the knee bolster in place so we can get it out of the way. Once that's out of the way, we can install our Chime module, and if your truck is a 2018 or a 2019 Classic, we're also going to plug in a CAN harness and run that up to the Heighten. With the 2 Phillips screws removed, we can now unbolt the knee bolster and pull it toward the back of the truck to remove it. Now we want to grab the Chime speaker and the Chime hardware pack. We're going to unscrew these screws to remove the mounting bracket so we can bolt the bracket to the truck and then reinstall the speaker to the bracket. So now we'll take the bracket and we'll bolt this to the metal bracket underneath the dash. Here's where we're going to mount the Chime module. Taking the bracket, aligning it with the holes in the metal bracket. If you don't have 2 holes that align, simply drill another hole that matches your bracket. Then using the supplied hardware, put the bolts through the bracket and through the truck's bracket, then spin on the locking nuts. Now with the speaker bracket attached to the truck's bracket, reinstall the speaker to the bracket using the supplied screws. Now that we have our Chime module securely mounted to the dash, we're going to route the cable up through the dash to where the Heighten's going to sit. Pull the slack up through so we can tighten this up inside the dash. We'll put a zip tie on here to tighten up our wiring. The Heighten does have a built-in microphone right in the front of the screen, but the kit also includes an optional external microphone. If you choose to install the optional external microphone, grab one of the supplied clips, mount the microphone in the clip, attach it to the A-pillar, run the wiring down the weather stripping, sneak the wiring through the dash, and follow the Chime module wiring. Now we'll just pull the rest of the microphone cable up through the dash where the Heighten will sit. And again, we're going to take the excess cable and zip tie that up so it's neat inside the dash of our truck. Those cables are ready for the Heighten. If you're installing in a 2018 or 2019 Classic, we're going to take this CAN bus connector here and connect here underneath the dash. Then we're going to take this end of the cable and route it along the path of the Chime module cable up to the dash where the Heighten will sit. Because we're working in a 2017, we're not going to install this cable. Now that we have all the cables installed and run through the dash, we're going to reinstall the lower knee bolster and install the 2 Phillips screws that secure it into place. Now we're ready to remove the factory USB hub from the center console so that we can install the hub that came with the Hyten. It has dual USB ports, HDMI, and a 3.5mm aux. The cables are long enough to go down behind the seat and route up to the dash. But if you want to make cable routing a little bit easier, you can remove the passenger seat like we're about to. Based on the year of your truck, your mounting hardware on your seats may vary. We've got 2 bolts up front, 2 bolts in the rear, and then 2 more bolts bolting the seat to the center console. If you need to know the steps of how to remove the seat, you can use a vehicle repair manual to find out how to take the seat out of your truck. We have a magic truck, so we just clap our hands twice, and the passenger seat disappears. The factory USB hub is integrated very well into the center of the center console. So we needed to disassemble the center console so we can remove that hub and install the multimedia hub that comes with the Hyten. So open the center console. Using your panel pry tool, remove this front plastic panel. And now we're going to carefully remove the vinyl around the center console, slowly peeling the edge up, working our way all the way around. Now we can pull that down to access the foam. We've found some trucks this foam is glued, some it's not. We need to get to this USB hub, so we're going to pull the foam back carefully right here to access the connectors, and you can always use spray adhesive when you're done to reattach the foam. Of course, the outside liner will go on and reattach to secure it into place ultimately. Now that we've peeled back the foam, we have access to remove the connectors and remove the factory hub from the center console. Our kit includes 2 different sets of plastics. Find the one that matches the USB hub in your Ram and use that plastic and the 4 supplied cables. We've got 2 USBs, an HDMI, and a 3.5mm aux. We're going to route these cables up through the center console to where the hub will sit. So I'm just going to take these cables and route up through this hole. Now with all 4 of the cables here, we can assemble the hub. One at a time, we're going to install the cables through the backing plate and then into the front piece. The HDMI has the largest connector. It will only fit in this spot down here. So now we know we have the back plate in the proper orientation. We'll install the 3.5mm aux and the 2 USB ports. Now we just have to plug this in, working the cables a little bit to get them to snap into place. Now with all of our connectors seated, we can pull the cables back and install the hub. Now we're going to route the cables down through the center console, underneath the carpet, up to the dash where the Hyten's going to sit. In order to do that, we need to remove this bolt, and this plastic panel is going to swing out of the way. Now that we have all of these cables run to the bottom of the center console, we're ready to route up underneath the carpet to the front of the truck. We're going to remove the plastic by the door sill and the plastic underneath the front of the dash to make the routing easier. You can use a long zip tie or a dash snake to make routing the cables through the carpet easier. Now with the cables routed to the front of the dash, we're going to pass them up through the dash to where the heighten will sit. Just like we did with the other cables before, we're going to take the excess of these cables and we're going to zip tie them up neatly to keep things clean inside the dash. The last thing we need to do here in the truck before we head over to the bench is to reassemble the center console. Now we're ready to mount the heightened brain to the mounting brackets that are going to mount it inside our Ram pickup. So take the brain and the mounting brackets and align the plate just near the bottom of the heighten and install the 2 mounting screws on each side. Now that these pieces are assembled, we can set them aside. We'll grab the dash and our heighten and assemble the display. The plastic mounting brackets that secure the heighten display into the dash have several pieces. There's the front plate that fits the heighten directly, and there's a back plate that mates to this plate through the dash of the truck. If your Ram was equipped with the 8.4-inch radio, you're going to use the rectangular plate. If you're equipped with a 5-inch radio, you're going to use the rectangle with the rounded corners. So take the plastic that matches your truck, set it inside the factory dash. Now the display piece, these 2 posts on the display piece are going to line up with these 2 tabs, and it's going to engage with these 2 holes. So line up the posts and snap it into place. Now we can roll this back down and install the 6 mounting screws that secure those pieces of plastic together. Now we can install the 4 mounting screws that secure the heightened display into the kit. Now we're ready to head back to the truck. Now we're ready to mount the GPS antenna in the vehicle. It does come with a grounding plate, so attach your GPS antenna to the plate. And using the long zip tie that came with our kit, we're going to mount this up over the top bar inside the dash here. Right here, and we're going to use the zip tie to secure it into place. We want to wind up our excess GPS cable, but we want to avoid electromagnetic interference. So we're going to make loops, 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 and then when we're done, we'll twist it in a figure 8 and zip tie it to itself. Now we're ready to make our plug-and-play connections on our wiring harness. These 2 harnesses that are labeled VA1, take the small adapter and plug that onto the end of the harness. If we were in a 2018 or 2019 Classic and we ran the CAN bus wire through, we would disconnect and plug in here. The large connector plugs into our radio replacement module. The pack link module has a small piece of double-sided tape included. Put that on the back of your pack link module. Peel the backing off and stick it to the module. The small 10-pin cable is going to plug into either ports on the pack link and the pack link port on the radio replacement module. There's a harness over here the Chime module plugs into. This particular truck is non-amplified, so we're going to plug into the port that says non-amplified. Now all of the connections are made to our radio replacement module. The rest of these connectors will plug into the back of the heighten, and this will plug into the Ram's factory wiring harness. We're going to take the radio replacement module and zip tie it to the factory wiring so it's not just bouncing around inside our truck. On our multiple camera input harness, there's one pink wire that's labeled Speed Sense. we're going to connect that into the bulleted connector on our main harness that's also labeled SpeedSense. Take the antenna adapter and plug that into the white connector. This large harness that has our RCA inputs and outputs has a reverse camera input. If you have a reverse camera on your RAM, go ahead and connect it here. The Highton does provide accessory output and ground to power up your aftermarket cameras, so connect your connectors here. This harness also has our auxiliary input, so grab the cables labeled auxiliary input, grab the RCAs we ran through the carpet earlier and connect those here. Now with these connections made, we can plug the harness into the RAM factory wiring. Now we're ready to grab the Highton brain, plug in all these connections, and bolt it into the dash. If you've installed the optional microphone, that plugs into here, labeled mic. And this harness plugs into the back of the Highton. Now before we tuck these wires up into the dash, we're going to connect our two cables that connect the Highton brain to the display. Now we'll tuck these cables inside the dash and mount the Highton to the truck. Make sure your two display connection cables are routed out through the front of the kit. Now we'll reinstall the four 7mm bolts that secure this into the dash. Now we're ready to grab that factory RAM dash with the Highton display, attach these two LVDS and power cables and the factory connectors, and snap everything back into the dash. Now that we have our dash piece snapped back into place, we'll reinstall the T25 Torx bolts we removed to take the dash out earlier. Be sure to reinstall the rubber mat in the tray. Now we're ready to turn the truck on and take a look at the Highton. And just like that, we've now upgraded that factory 5-inch or 8.4-inch radio to the massive 10-inch Highton touchscreen HD display. We hope you've enjoyed this install video. Thanks for watching.